Hi everyone, my name is Melanie and I am a tiny house dweller and an advocate for living legally. I currently live in an 8 by 18 tiny house on wheels in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. My husband and I decided that we were going to go tiny about 3 years ago, and when we started looking through all of the laws and figuring out what we could do or couldn't do, it became very clear that we were not at that time going to be able to live legally in our tiny house in this state, other than maybe a couple campgrounds that were really far away from us, and because of where we were working, that really wasn't an option. So we made the hard decision that we were going to go ahead and build anyways, and we parked in a friend's backyard for the first year of our tiny house living experience. And it really wasn't the way that I wanted it to be. It was very difficult to be considered an illegal dweller because I'm thinking, like, there's so many houses that are collapsing and falling apart and having all of these problems with affordable living, and yet here I am in this beautiful brand new tiny house that we just built, and I wasn't considered legal. And so I started a group here in Virginia, and we started looking for legal parking across the state, and that meant calling campgrounds and RV parks, zoning officials, building inspectors, wherever we could to collect information. And after about a year of living in our friend's backyard, we did find a campground that would allow us to stay in it. And we stayed there for about 8 months, 7-8 months, legally parked in a campground. But of course, I don't really feel like tiny houses belong in RV spots, mostly because these are for people who are traveling a lot, and therefore it's a different kind of lifestyle. So they're for travelers, they're for people that just want to come and party for the summer, have a great time, and then go back home to their big house. And yet here I was coming home every day to a campground that was my real home. So there was a little bit of a dynamic. It was a lot of fun living in the campground, but it wasn't what we really wanted to do. We built our tiny house to be partially on-grid, partially off-grid. We wanted to homestead, and we wanted to be able to have land and raise animals and garden and enjoy the quiet and the peace of the country, and we weren't getting that in a campground. So with the group that I was working with here in Virginia, we found a county, Buckingham County, where I spoke with my zoning official here and explained what was going on. And what I found out is that a lot of the zoning officials or administrators don't really know what tiny houses are. They don't understand what the movement is, they don't know how they hook up, they don't know how they work, the on wheels, off wheels, all of that kind of stuff. It's not in their ballpark. It's not something they're working with every day. So when I would call and talk to zoning officials, I would say, hey, how are you, what do you know about tiny houses? How do you feel about tiny houses on wheels? Do you understand about the movement and what's happening with this? And most of the time the answers are, we really like them. We think they're a great idea. But they don't have the rules written down in their codes to be able to account for them. So when they go to check a box, you've got RV, you've got house, you've got mobile home, and there's nothing to check for tiny houses. So they're really limited by what their paperwork is allowing them to do. And our situation in pursuing our land here in Virginia was very specific to how our home was built and what we could and couldn't do. So we tried to register our tiny house with the DMV, but the DMV said you can be called a trailer, or you could be called a trailer with a secured weighted load. And that, of course, you can't live in. So I said, well, I'm not a trailer. I'm not a trailer with a secured weighted load. So we are not a registered trailer. And when I was speaking with my zoning official about this, she said, well, you know, the DMV should really hop on this. And I thought, she's like, yeah, they can make some money. And I thought so too. But I, you know, explained that I couldn't really register it. So I don't have license plates. And I don't have any way to move it myself. And so we got to talking about that. And she said, well, that's kind of like a mobile home in our books here. And I said, yeah. She said, well, you want to keep the wheels on, which was another thing we were discussing. And I told her I'm very interested in keeping my wheels on. And she said, well, the mobile home ordinance is very similar to that. So mobile homes in our county are allowed to be moved, and there's no restriction on taking wheels on or off. And she said most of the time the mobile home companies leave the wheels on for transport, and then they take them off and put them on the next home for transport. But there's nothing that says that we couldn't have them on. The mobile home companies just own their own tires, so that's why they were being taken off. So we talked through a lot of stuff like that. And again, not being able to transport it myself required me to have a professional mover who's licensed and bonded to move it up and down the road. And she said that was very similar to the mobile home requirements of moving like that, since I can't just hook mine up to a truck. And we got into kind of the logistics of why I wanted to keep the wheels on. And I was telling her, I said, you know, the most important part of why I want wheels on my tiny house is that if there was a fire or there was something that was going to come and damage my home, that I could call a tow truck or a professional mover and have him move my home to safety. And in our area, even maybe potentially hurricanes. So I said, you know, I want to be able to protect the equity that I have in my tiny house. So it's very important for me to keep my wheels on. And I said, but I own the land. I purchased the land, so I own it. So even if I did take my house away to safety for a fire or something like that, then I would bring it back and hook it back up to my systems, because this is where I live. And I said, and you know, when all of my neighbors' houses then burn down because they can't escape the fire, I will still pay taxes because my home will still be standing. She liked that a lot. And, you know, we talked some more, and we went kind of through all of the ordinances and the different things that they could do. And at the end of the day, I am parked on my own land legally as a dwelling. And because I can't pay taxes to the DMV, the zoning department is taxing my tiny house as a dwelling. I just got my property taxes, and so they've assessed it as new building improvements to the property, and I'm able to pay taxes based off of the square footage of my home, which was exciting for me because I really thought that I was never going to be able to pay taxes. And you know, nobody likes to pay taxes, but I did because that makes you a more legal dwelling, a more legal place to live. And I'm telling her, you know, most of the people that live tiny are not really trying to skirt the laws. We just don't have laws to work within, so we're doing the best that we can. So it took us about 2 years. We went from living illegally to a campground to legal landowners. We've been on our property now for almost a year. I would say the most important things to do when you're talking to your zoning officials or your health department or your building inspector is, one, to educate them, to share your story, to share what you're trying to do, which is not always going to be 100%. You know, they still have their papers that they have to mark in and work around. But share what you're trying to do. Go to your city council meetings. Talk to your board of directors. Talk to your board of supervisors. If you can establish a group of people that can go together and kind of put up a united front, so to speak, and say, hey, this is something that we're interested in our community. What can we do to further the progress of it? I don't believe that most zoning officials are truly against having tiny houses. I think they just don't know how to categorize them yet. And because we're such a kind of a niche area and we're not really fitting in with all the laws and the rules yet, it's a really great time to be sharing that information with them so that they do know what to do with us when the next person calls and says, hey, I have a tiny house on wheels and I want to park it here. And they can say, yeah, we have some information about that, or we've done this, or we've talked to somebody who knows about it. If you can share with them some of the reasons that you're going tiny, and a lot of them are affordable housing, living green, living more sustainably, energy consumption. I mean, there's so many reasons that people go tiny, just to live simple, to take care of the land. If you can share with them some of those reasons, a lot of times they appeal to what the county is looking for. And I guess it kind of shows them that there's another way that maybe they didn't think about or they haven't really heard about. And I've spoken with many zoning officials across my state, not just in the county that I'm in. And some of them I call and I say, hey, this is what I've got, this is what I'm looking to do. And it was an absolute no. I got so many no's. But I kept calling and I kept talking and I kept explaining what I was trying to do and the importance of it. And eventually I did get through in a county. So I'm going to say you're going to get a ton more no's than you're ever going to get yeses right now. But the more you call and the more you talk to them, the more they start to figure out what you're doing. And if you're working with a group, that group of people is calling and talking to them too. So then they say, hey, there is a lot of constituents in this area that are interested in this. Maybe we need to reconsider putting in an ordinance. It's something that's still kind of the wild, wild west out there, I like to say, when it comes to tiny houses. Yes, some states are definitely more on board than others, but it's a struggle to get through in some places. So if you're interested in living in a tiny house legally, I know there's a lot of communities and obviously RV parks that will let you in across the country, and even some areas being able to park on your own land. But for much more of the United States, there's still a lot of places that don't allow us. So I would encourage you to please call and speak to your zoning officials. Get together in groups on Facebook or Meetup or local tiny house groups and bring all of those people from your county together to talk to officials about what you like to do in your area. So the more information and the more knowledge that you bring them, the more interested they are in listening to you, especially if you're a taxpayer in that county. Because I can call a county, that I don't live in and talk to them, but they don't really care because I'm not looking to buy in their county or pay taxes. So the more people that are directly related to that county, the more they're willing to listen and, take note that that's something that the people want to bring in. It's definitely a struggle. I really never thought that after, 2 years of being illegal and parked in a backyard and hanging out at a campground that I was ever going to be a landowner. And everything just kind of lined up right for us. And we own a beautiful, little over 1 acre property. It has a stream on it. It was a property that was distressed. So it had a burnt down house that was on it. And it had some old mobile home structures that were removed before we closed on the land. But we have spent the last year working really hard on this property and cleaning it up and increasing the value of it, so it's even more desirable to the county now because we've almost doubled the assessed value of the land in 1 year. So by doing that, the county sees a little piece of property that was worth, 16 grand or whatever and is now worth 34 grand. And they say, hey, in 1 year, this is what this tiny house dweller did. So it becomes important for the county to be able to see that there is some return on investment for us parking here as well, not only for our structure but also for the land value. And that means tax money for them, and that's what they're interested in. So I would highly encourage you to speak to your zoning administrator, your health department, and your building inspector on what are the things that are holding up in your county. What things can you kind of push around to get through? Are they willing to work around their laws or ordinances? And not all of them are. And I think some of going tiny and living in a tiny house on wheels is being flexible about where you can park or live. I see so many people that say, hey, we want to live in this one city, and I'm thinking that's great, but that one city is not tiny friendly, and it's probably not going to be for a very long time. So if this is something that you truly want to do, you have to start looking at the areas that are tiny friendly and putting your time and investment in those to create some momentum for other people to start noticing. I think the flexibility and being able to move around and work with the counties that are allowing us, work with the cities that are allowing us, or even the communities if that's what you're interested in, because the more people that come to those areas and work in those areas, you're setting the example for other areas to follow. And I think it's very important that we work hard to set a good example for tiny dwellers across the country when we're tiny, so that people can see what's happening and what's going on and what kind of impact that makes to a county or a community, and how that can benefit that county or community in a positive way. So I hope this gives you a little bit of insight into going tiny and getting legal and working hard to, create positive change in the tiny house community. And again, my name is Melanie. You can follow me on Serenitas Tiny Living on Facebook. And I hope to chat with you guys online or see you around. I hope you enjoy all the other presenters, and have a great day.